It will be a while before you can judge Will Venable on wins and losses. So let's discuss the standards the new White Sox skipper should be held to next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the White Sox are going to be doing a lot of losing during the next couple of seasons. So let's discuss in the first segment the standards Will Venable should be held to once he is officially announced as the team's manager. Then a couple of players are likely to be back next season, but for the wrong reasons. Let's discuss in the second segment why it'd be better to move on from these guys. And finally, with the World Series over, let's see if the Yankees or Dodgers have some bargain free agents worth pursuing. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Will Venable is a home run hire because he's a former big league player and his impressive post-playing career. But you and I still don't know how good of a manager he will actually be. You know, the Rangers lost this season in the only game where he was the acting manager. However, it was a 2-1 defeat. He did go 1-5 when Alex Cora missed 6 games in 2022 due to COVID-19. And the thing, though, is since he's technically 1-6 as a manager, I wouldn't get too worried because wins are not going to matter, at least for the next 2 seasons. What will matter is how Venable establishes a good clubhouse culture that includes players being prepared to win the game in front of them, helping Chris Getz establish how the team should be playing winning baseball, and hopefully that includes hitting more home runs, better base running, and better fielding, and then also pushing the correct buttons to be an above replacement level manager, or at the very least, a net neutral manager. And then finally, players getting better under his coaching staff and him also not being so stubborn. So those are the standards that I'm going to evaluate Will Venable on. You know, that should be the criteria that I suggest that when you look at, is Will Venable going to be a successful manager? I would look at those types of areas because let's say, again, he gets the Sox to win 20 more games. That's still 61-101, okay? You know, in context, that's an amazing turnaround. But it's still in the black and white. And yes, I know I'm a guy that says context matters, but in the black and white, you're still 61-101. You're getting back to 2023 levels. So if he can get them back to 2023 levels next season, that is a success. But you should be grading him on that. I say grade him on these standards. So he doesn't need to establish a kumbaya clubhouse. You know, plenty of clubhouses. There's a lot of guys that don't like each other. I mean, think about it. There's 26 different personalities in there, 26 different backgrounds. But what you want to have is a clubhouse where the players are respect each other and feel respected, and that everybody's pulling the same way on the rope. You don't want to have what you had in 2023 where, you know, you had Yasmani Grandal basically running down every guy, Tim Anderson and him getting in verbal altercations, all those issues where everybody was doing kind of their own thing. Nobody was talking baseball after the game. Like, that's the thing. You want after the game, guys just sitting around, chatting baseball, figuring out how to get better, you know, that type of stuff. A positive clubhouse, that does go a long way. Doesn't mean they have to, again, be singing Kumbaya and having meditation and hot yoga sessions together. It just means they should like being around each other. They shouldn't dread being there. And I'm going to make a Milwaukee Brewers reference, so drink. But I have seen how franchises that have hit rock bottom have used the next season to at least start planting the seeds to eventually get back to winning. And that, you know, that's part of that culture, that clubhouse culture. Ned Yost did that for the Brewers in 2003. Now, he might have turned out to be a stubborn, arrogant manager who the Royals won a World Series in spite of. But in 2003 and 2004, he did a great job of establishing the standards he obtained from his days with the Atlanta Braves and then putting that into place in the clubhouse. You know, how do you think Scott Podsednik got a shot? You wouldn't have Scott Podsednik in 2005 if it wasn't for 2003 and what the Brewers did and what Ned Yost started to bring in to the Milwaukee Brewers. Alex Sanchez was the more talented center fielder, but he was not playing up to the standards. Gets benched. Scotty Potts took advantage of his playing time by playing up to the standards. And despite being overmatched for 2 seasons, establishing, the winning standards, this is how you should go about playing winning baseball. This is how you should go about doing your business. And that's the thing that Will Venable should be establishing in the clubhouse. This is how we go about doing our business. Eventually got the Brewers to finish with a 500 season in 05, first time in like 12 years, and then playoff contention in 2007 and 2008. So you got to come in and establish these are the things that must be done to win ball games. And it probably established that from what you've learned with your days in the Cubs and the Red Sox and the Rangers. Please bring that to the White Sox, okay? Please. And if the Sox are going to lose next season, it should be because they were overmatched. They were just out-talented. Not because they gave away games because of bad defense, unprepared hitters, and relievers giving away leads because they ignored their pitching plan. Because that's what happened this season. You either had players that were out of position. You had Michael Kopech, who up until his last 5 games just kept ignoring his pitching plan. You had, hitters who even admitted that, well, we kind of got a general idea of what we were supposed to do, but nobody had a specific attack plan. And if Getz wants Venable to be his partner in pulling off the biggest rebuild ever, he needs to then listen to him and say, okay, do you have a way to fix our defense, to make sure we are using the proper analytics? Implement it then. I'll go get Jerry to get us the money. He has to establish how the Sox should play, specifically play baseball, and he needs to establish it throughout the organization, especially if he's going to be Getz's partner. Hopefully he brings with him the power game that the Rangers had in 2023. That's one of the things that I want to see the White Sox start doing under Venable. Hit home runs. Now, it comes with getting power players, but again, the Rangers crushed the ball in 2023, and home runs plays well to guaranteed rate field. Get those power bats along with the ability to field the ball. The Rangers were second in fielding percentage in 2023. They hit the ball a country mile, and they caught it, and they fielded it too. And then mix that in with all your young arms, and the Sox should have a winner by 2027. And if he deviates from that and starts using acronyms like Pedro falls fast, because that's what Pedro wanted to play. He wanted to play this like grinder baseball, and it doesn't work at guaranteed rate field. You can say in 2005, well, grinder rules. Well, they also hit a lot of home runs in 2005, and they fielded the ball great in 2005. That's what plays to guaranteed rate field, and that still plays to the modern game. Hit the ball over the fence, catch it, and throw the guy out. On the opposite side, pitch well. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. I don't know why they keep deviating from this. Yes, you're going to have those issues where you're going to have problems scoring runs because there are going to be power, droughts, power outages, pun intended. But then what you got to do is get to the situational hitting. If it's an 0-2 count, just keep the line moving. Figure out how to get the ball in play. That's what I've always kept saying. Those things work in today's game, and that's what they should be building. And I hope that's what Venable is going to be trying to impart into this organization. And I don't want, a try-hard lineup either. I'm sorry. You can try as hard as you can in baseball. It's still not going to matter. The only thing that you should be trying hard on is hustling down the first baseline or trying to get at a fly ball. That's it. Otherwise, you can try to be as hard as you can, but if that pitcher's throwing 99 miles an hour and you can't catch up to it, you're out. That's just how it is. I want prepare hard. I want hit the ball hard. That is the modern game. You should have great preparation, and then you should have plate approaches where you're going to crush the ball as hard as you can. That's the modern game. So he has to make sure this team is prepared every game, as there were reports of the team being in the dark ages with data and analytics. And that didn't put out the best lineups or rotations or the defense in the best spots. Get that up to standards. There should be specific hitting attacks for each game for every pitcher. Hitters should have a hitting plan. Pitchers should have a pitching plan. Not hard. And the defense should know where to be. And Venable has to help lead that charge organizationally to get better in that simple area, or improve in, and then make sure the team is ready to go to win the game in front of them. I don't want to see the White Sox not be prepared to win a baseball game. I do want to see if his in-game decisions at least turn out to not add to the White Sox loss total. At the very least, that's what I'm going to look at too, because too many times Pedro's bad decisions and questionable lineups added to the loss column. And the same can be said with Tony La Russa. I mean, we've been dealing with this now since 2021, where bad manager in-game decisions and bad lineups have led to actual additional losses in the loss column. At least be net neutral. I hope Venable turns out to be a plus manager like his mentors in Joe Madden, Alex Cora, and Bruce Bochy. But at the very least, be a manager who doesn't put the team further in the loss hole with, say, bad bullpen decisions. Now, mistakes are going to happen, but can it even out? And he is going to be tasked with player development at the big league level, but I'm convinced more and more that player development is organizationally. I mean, just look at the Rays, look at the Brewers, look at the Guardians. It's organizationally. Everybody's playing the same standards of baseball from rookie ball to the big leagues. And for example, Venable has resources such as Brian Bannister to help him develop the pitching. What I want from him is to push to add a director of hitting and maybe a director of fielding, much like Bannister, to ensure every player is being developed to play the baseball he envisions to win from the complex league all the way up to the big leagues. What I would want to focus more on Venable in the player area is, are the players getting better once they reach the big leagues? I don't want to see any more regression. I don't want to see anybody more flatlining. Too many players got worse under Pedro Grifol. Andrew Benintendi somehow went from at least being a solid baseball player to just being gosh awful under Grifol. And I know there were some injuries, but for the most part, he looked terrible. And then the moment Grifol is fired, Andrew Benintendi is suddenly looking like the player that at least the Sox saw worth giving him a $78 million contract. Sad, though, that's the richest free agent contract ever. And yeah, Luis Robert Jr. did reach superstar status, but he regressed this year. Tim Anderson got worse under Pedro Grifol. Paul DeJong's defense went from solid to awful. You want to see players thrive and only decline because it's father time. And since the Sox likely won't have a ton of aging veterans, you want to see players getting better. And finally, you and I have seen too many stubborn managers come through, especially in Tony and Pedro. I want Will to be adaptable. The best managers do not stick to dogma. They also don't have that flush it attitude. That was the thing that also just drove me nuts about Pedro. I'm not saying that you carry losses with you like a weight. You want to try to win as many of the 162 games, but yes, you're going to lose some. You just shouldn't lose 121 of them. But you learn from them. You should be trying to learn from them. I think Pedro installed that flush it attitude to the point where nobody was learning from these losses. The one thing I did like from Grady Sizemore was that losses should be a learning experience. Not just flush it and let's move on. Or not be stubborn. I don't want to see Will Venable be stubborn when you're completely wrong in a perspective like when Pedro lost the clubhouse with his effing flat comments after the Kyle Bradish game. Don't be stubborn. Don't double down on things. Sometimes realize, I could be wrong and be adaptable. Nothing wrong with being committed to your standards, but be adaptable because that way you can get better. So with Venable coming in and the influence he will have, there will no doubt be some roster turnover, but I do fear a couple of players will be back that should not. Let's discuss who they are next on Locked On White Sox. My dad took me to game one of the 1993 ALCS, and while the result was not great, along with Michael Jordan's retirement news breaking out, I'll always have that memory as I got to take in a playoff game live and in person. And if you want to take in memorable moments, I suggest you use the Gametime app to get your tickets. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They got flash deals and zone deals. With flash deals, you can save even more with an exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or events. With zone deals, you can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple and Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago baseball, White Sox baseball venting with me. I meant to say, either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. Sometimes you just say too much, or you're just like, I got this great idea to say, and then it comes out just totally wrong. I don't know if you've ever been there. I know I have plenty of times, and I just happened to me right there. All right, so I could see Chris Getz thinking with a new coaching staff that Andrew Vaughn can finally be unlocked. I also see Justin Anderson getting another shot to be used a lot in the bullpen, and I think those two coming back are a huge mistake. And Gavin Sheets, I can actually see him having a 50-50 shot of returning, and that too would be a big mistake. Andrew Vaughn is projected to make $6 million in arbitration for a guy who is a career minus 0.4 F4 player. The best F4 he's ever posted is 0.4 in 2023. This is a top 5 pick who was supposed to be raking. He was supposed to be one of your foundational pieces, and he's a career WRC plus of 102. At some point, you have to accept that he is barely a replacement level player who doesn't do anything special in the margins. He is a career minus 70 defensive rating per Fangraphs and a career minus 19 defensive runs saved. So you don't get any defensive value. You don't get much hitting value. You're not getting any value from Andrew Vaughn, and he's going to cost you $6 million. And he keeps falling well short of projections. He's supposed to have a 263, 327, 453 slash line with 24 home runs per Zips. Instead, he turned in a 246, 297, 402 slash line and 19 home runs. I mean, you have to accept there's nothing to salvage here. Even I finally realized that Vaughn is not going to realize his immense potential. I boldly predicted he would make the All-Star team. And then he got off to that terrible start, and after 4 years of just looking at him, I have accepted that he is nothing more than a replacement level player. And even then, he's not even a very good replacement level player. You can go find a replacement level player at first base and save yourself a few millions in the process. And remember, every dollar counts right now. As yes, the Sox, they can still generate revenue, but they have to be taking on losses where even the Dodgers would be like, you know what? Yeah, the bottom line is more important than trying to see if year 5 is where it finally clicks for Andrew Vaughn. Because that's the other thing now. We've gone through 4 seasons of this. If it hasn't happened by now, I don't think it's going to happen in year 5. I don't see Will Venable bringing in a hitting coach that's going to finally be like, you know what, let's do this, this, and this. And finally, oh my gosh, Andrew Vaughn is what we thought he's going to be. He's the next Paul Konerko. He's not. He's replacement level. And you know how the Sox got Paul Konerko? Because teams finally realized, you know what, it's time to move on. And there's nothing wrong with eventually salvaging your career, but let's let another organization deal with that, okay? Because it's not happening here. For some reason, sometimes you just have to accept that even though while it's a bad look for the White Sox organization, sometimes you just do have to accept that, you know what, some guys just thrive elsewhere. A change of scenery does help because, again, guys like me, for example, keep hammering these players to the point where it's like they start to realize, you know what, maybe I'm not a good player. They go somewhere else where not much is known about them, and they start to thrive. And, I don't see it happening here on the South Side. Justin Anderson threw 53 1/3 innings only because I'm convinced Chris Getz is clueless when it comes to addressing the bullpen. He had 5 blown saves, and yet I fear the Sox will see if he can be the closer or at least still be a high leverage arm, which he isn't. He wasn't. Again, 5 blown saves. The guy had a 4.39 ERA and a 1.50 WHIP. He was a minus 1.07 win probability added player. And Fangraphs clutch rating, he was minus 0.81. So he's basically a minus clutch player, and he doesn't add anything to your ability to win. Why bring this guy back? And especially the clutch rating, That's a rating where how much better or worse a player does in high leverage situations compared to neutral ones. So if you even wanted to put him in a low leverage situation, fine. But again, a 1.50 whip, and Zips projects him to have a 1.56 whip next year, doesn't make me feel any more comfortable that he can even handle low leverage situations. Just to me, he seems more like a guy like, well, we're losing. Why don't you just keep wearing it, Justin? And the one exception I'm willing to make with this front office, and I'm scared as Getz has shown he's incapable of doing this, but the one exception I'm willing to make is the team should use its limited financial resources on the bullpen. I don't want them to see what the previous regime did when they gave multiple year deals to bullpen arms, but a couple 1 year, even with an option to some veterans, makes sense because I can see next year's trade deadline being similar to this year's, where contenders prioritize bullpen help. They were willing to give up decent prospects, high ceiling prospects for bullpen help. Think about it. If the Dodgers are willing to embrace bullpenning, then I can see even them thinking, especially with a labor issue upcoming, maybe you can save a few bucks going with a reliever. And as you saw in the World Series, bullpens matter in the playoffs. So leverage that trend and hope that trend continues and sign some veterans that can be flipped at the deadline. Although again, I'm very, very pessimistic on Chris Getz because you saw the veteran bullpen arms he signed, and they were all terrible. They all got DFA. John Brevia, Tim Hill. I mean, they were just terrible. And the veterans that he did sign in spring training as non-roster invites, the ones he should have kept, he didn't. That's where I'm definitely concerned with Chris Getz. I don't think he can build a bullpen. I just don't. And I fear that they're going to be like, well, Justin Anderson had some moments. Yeah, but he had a lot of moments of bad. And Gavin Sheets, it's time to accept him being a power hitter is just a myth. It is. He isn't even Dan Pasqua, the ultimate power hitting left-handed bat off the bench. Pasqua had 62 home runs through 4 seasons in the 80s. Sheets has 46. He's not the left-handed power bat. Okay? But I could see the Sox embracing a Sheets Vaughn platoon, especially if Edgar Caro is going back to AAA to start the season. And I could see the front office being convinced, well, he had a 3.03 on base percentage as a DH. See if that number can go up. But it's not going to be by much. He's at best a career journeyman. And you can find better production in the margins when it comes to journeyman players. Speaking of finding better players, it's going to be hard when the Sox will be shopping at the clearance rack in free agency, and I would even say at the scrap heap. But let's see if the Yankees or Dodgers have any bargains that are worth signing in the offseason. Next on Locked On White Sox. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all my everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as the show is available on all major podcast platforms. If you do have trick-or-treating tonight, hopefully it goes well for your kiddos, and make sure to get that dad tax in. All right, so in a perfect world, Jerry Reinsdorf realizes if he wants a fraction of the public assistance he's looking for when it comes to a new stadium, he realized he needs an attraction, and he should pursue Juan Soto. But you and I mean, it's sad that we can't even dare to dream of Juan Soto coming to the South Side, because Jerry would just choke on his morning coffee once he sees the cost it would take to get Soto to the South Side. I mean, think about it. This is the guy that laughed at the idea of signing Shohei Ohtani to the White Sox. Even he was like, yeah, that ain't going to happen. Best hitter in baseball on the free agent market. I'm not even, no, $700 million. Even though $680 million of it will be deferred. Are you kidding me? That's sad. And that's sad that we can't even think of Juan Soto, a generational talent, still in the prime, basically about to enter the prime of his career. And you've seen what he's doing right now. Imagine what he's going to do for the next couple of years. And it's, I'm not even, let's laugh at that. And since the heavy lifting to improve a garbage roster is not going to be done through free agency, and if it is, it's going to be at the discount rack, and I would even say the scrap heap. That's where the Sox will be. That's where the Sox will be shopping. And with the World Series over, the Dodgers and Yankees do have some bargain free agents the Sox should pursue to help their bullpen. They've got, the Dodgers got a guy that could be a bridge to Colson Montgomery, and they also have some backup catcher help that Josh Nelson told our show that the Sox are potentially looking at, to upgrade at least that backup catcher. So let's start with the Dodgers. Miguel Rojas has a club option, and if the Dodgers pass, that puts a shortstop who was 8 defensive runs saved and 11 outs above average on the market. Now, he's going to be 36 next season. While he doesn't have the power that would make him attractive on the trade market that Paul DeJong had, he gets outs, he fields the ball, and he did finish as a 2.8 F4 player in 103 games last year. And Spot Track has his value at a 1 year, $2.7 million deal. That would be a nice bridge to Colson Montgomery, as Colson should get some more at-bats at AAA to prove his strong September and outstanding Arizona Fall League was no fluke, because right now it could be a fluke because he was terrible overall at AAA at the plate. But you want to hope that this September and the Arizona Fall League was showing signs that he's starting to get it, that he is making improvement, that he can still reach his Corey Seager ceiling, But you want to give him a few more at-bats at AAA, I think, before you allow him to basically now sink or swim in the big leagues, because that's kind of what they did at AAA. They just kind of threw him in the AAA waters, and he sank for a while. But now his head's starting to come above water, so I would like to see a few more bats, maybe April and May, before you bring him up, or even in July. And I know it's like Sox fans can't be like, I can't wait that long. Yeah, you can. Team just lost 121 games. We've got time. Austin Barnes, he would not be a terrible backup catcher option if the Dodgers decide not to pick up his option. He's good at blocks above average and a solid pitch framer. Although, God, I really hope the automated strike zone comes soon, because I'm tired of pitch framing being one of the top criteria for a catcher. I want catchers. I'm going to be a little old school. I want the days where, remember, catchers were valued for throwing guys out at second or blocking balls, or could they hit for power? He's a good pitch framer. Let's get his 180 average in the lineup. No, we can fix all this because there's the technology, and they're experimenting it in the minors, and it's going great. I can't wait for that to come to Major League Baseball. But as Josh Nelson, as I said, the Sox are wanting to address catcher with their limited dollars, as they do want to give Edgar Caro more time in the minors. So Barnes would be a nice backup option to Corey Lee, and he's only expected to cost $1 million. The Yankees have some relievers worth looking at. Maybe a reunion with Tommy Cannelly. He's at $5.3 million per year for 2 years. Luke Weaver wouldn't be bad either. Just avoid Tim Hill, as he proved he's the worst version of himself on the South Side. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings you a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of Major League Baseball. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with hopefully some more insight on Will Venable from Locked On Rangers host Bryce Paterick. Bryce Paterick, yes. We're trying to lock down a time to record at least a crossover segment. And then obviously I'll have more about your Chicago White Sox too. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the standards Will Venable should be held to. 3 players likely to return, but should not. And some bargain free agents to pursue from the Dodgers and the Yankees. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.